Welcome to the third week. Just to check, everyone can hear me. Just raise your hand that we can all hear what I'm saying. Obviously, Chelsea can't see you, but I'm assuming you can hear me. If you can't, then yes, that's a yes from Chelsea. Wonderful. So thanks for joining this week. I hope you're all well. We're going to start with our mindfulness practice. So just make sure that you're comfortable, sitting with a nice straight spine. And if you're sitting in a chair, you can have both feet on the floor, flat on the floor if that's possible. And just making sure that you feel comfortable so you won't need to move or adjust yourself as we go through the practice. And then gently close the eyes. And relax your shoulders. Relax the chest and the abdomen. And take a moment to unclench your jaw. Soften the tongue. Just notice the quality of your breathing. So as you begin to tune your mind into your breath, just take a moment and notice, how does your breathing feel? Perhaps there's tension or tightness in the chest somewhere. Perhaps breathing feels slightly restricted or shallow. Maybe the breath is mostly up in the top of the chest. Maybe none of those things, but just noticing without judging or labeling. How is your breathing? And then whatever it is that you've found there, making a gentle effort now to release any tension, to bring a bit more softness into the chest, into the lower abdomen, and to allow the breath to be a little bit deeper, a bit longer, a bit fuller. And just notice how that feels. And keeping your awareness on the flow of your breath. So now begin to follow the breath. So watch as it comes in through the tip of the nose, the nostrils. And follow the journey of your breath down through the back of your throat, into the top lobe of your lung, and down into the whole of your lungs, right to the bottom of each lobe. And follow that journey back up, top of the chest, up the back of the throat, and out through the nostrils. So see if we can just stay with that practice. Just watching, observing yourself breathe, and being with the flow of the breath as the breath comes in and as the breath moves out. And as the breath comes in and as the breath moves out. And each time your awareness wanders away from your breath, just take a moment to notice where it wandered to. And then choosing in the next moment to come back to the present moment, to the flow of the breath in and the flow of the breath out. So bringing that extra level of awareness to the wandering, chattering mind, or the thoughts and emotions we might have, which is just to notice when we wander. Take a moment and say, I'm thinking about that again, or whatever it is, but notice where you've wandered to, and then come back. And as you continue to breathe, to observe the flow of your breath, just feeling that each breath brings with it a little bit more calm and a bit more relaxation. And when the mind wanders, however many times that may be, just notice if you judge yourself for that, if there's any labeling of your effort as poor or your focus as bad, any judgment at all. And if there is, again, releasing that, just knowing that it is the nature of our minds to wander off, to think, to become attached to things. And that being still with our breath and being in the present moment is a life skill. It's a bit like learning a language, and we're not necessarily able to just do it very easily, which is why we practice. So following the breath, the mind wanders, no need to judge or criticize. Notice even your judgment or your criticism as just a process of your mind, as just a pattern of thinking, a habit of thinking, which you do have the power to let go of and come back to yourself, the present moment, the breath flowing in and the breath flowing out. If you're finding it very difficult to not get caught up in thoughts, then you can let your mind just gently count forwards from 1 to 10 with each breath that you take, as a way to help to focus the mind a little bit more on the breath. And then once your mind feels a little bit quieter, you can release the counting, and again just let your awareness rest only on the feeling, the flow, the rhythm of your breathing. And so as we meditate, we're not attempting to push away any thoughts or push away irritation from our mind. We're practicing being patient with ourselves, with our body, and we're practicing noticing the experience of the busy mind. The experience of emotional ups and downs, even noticing perhaps the experience of the bored mind. And we're practicing letting go. So the mind wanders, a thought comes in, perhaps there's an emotion attached to it, maybe unpleasant, maybe uncomfortable. Just let it go. So like a breeze kind of blowing clouds across the sky, let it go and then come back to resting your awareness like dust settling on your breath. And allow your breath to carry you into a place of relaxed attention. You may find yourself becoming caught up in emotions, perhaps a sense of anxiety or sadness or anger or joy or even peace. And just allowing whatever emotions are there to be there without resisting, and to continue observing rather than running away or being completely drawn in. So can you allow those emotions to be there? And can you observe them without becoming attached or sucked in to the story of the emotion? And the feeling may shift and change. Observing that. And just gently, like you're training a puppy, just keep returning your awareness to the centeredness of your breath. Stay in the present moment. You may notice patterns of thoughts that occur as you practice. And just understanding that those are thoughts and feelings that have been created by your mind. So see if you can notice them for what they are. They're just thoughts. They're mental activity, often entirely habitual, So notice them for what they are, which is not the essence of who you are. And then return to your breathing. Let your attention rest gently on your breath. If the mind continues to pursue the thoughts, with compassion, just understand that this is the habit of your mind. The habit of your mind to pursue the thought. And there's really no reason to judge yourself. And when you notice that your mind is pursuing thoughts, just simply return your attention back to your breathing. Allowing your breath to carry you into a place of relaxed awareness and mindfulness. Being in the body and just simply breathing. Breath coming in and the breath flowing out. No need to strain or try too hard. Just allow the body to breathe itself. And just observe the body as it breathes. And slowly bringing your awareness back to the space of the room you're in. And just notice any sounds that you can hear around you, perhaps in the room you're in or further away. And when you're ready, you can gently open the eyes and stretch yourself out. So feel free to take a few stretches, help wake the body back up. See if you can hold on to some of what you've just found without switching the mind back to perhaps its usual mode of being. So, that was a slightly longer meditation practice on purpose, just to show us how it feels to do a 20-minute practice. So most of us at home have probably been doing from the audio, which is 10-minute, and there's a 13-minute, but shorter practices. There is some research to show that something slightly different starts to happen in your brain when you practice for 20 minutes or longer. So it might be a nice idea this week, not every day, that you practice your meditation, because sometimes we are shorter for time, but a nice idea to see if you can incorporate a few of the longer practices in. And so sticking with the immediate experience that we've just had, just wanted to see if anyone's got anything they'd like to share about how they found that meditation that we've just done. It can be a challenge or something you enjoyed. If you want to share something, just raise your hand and then you can unmute yourself. Harriet? Yep.
A bit high.
Say again?
I feel a bit high, like
Oh.
really just restful and peaceful and very sort of euphoric. Lovely feeling.
Wonderful. Thumbs up.
Good.
Anybody else? You might feel the opposite of euphoric, which is fine as well. Molly?
Felt quite stressed. I don't know, I think I've had quite a stressful couple of days, and then stopping for that long, like the longest meditation, I just found quite challenging because I wasn't allowing it in.
Okay. Yeah, that can happen. Right. So Lisa or Christine, you don't have to share anything, but if you'd like to. Yeah, Christine, if you go first.
Just briefly, I liked it because I felt I went kind of deeper. Somehow I feel more relaxed having that bit longer.
Great.
That's it.
Yep. Lisa?
Oh, hello. I felt I was really stressed all day today, and just a bit longer. It had different emotions. So I was stressed and annoyed, and then I got home and I was worried. But then after that meditation, I just feel really calm, and I was actually happy by the end of it.
Great. Wonderful. Okay. Thanks for sharing. So I thought I'd just see so going back more in our week now, how has our practice of mindfulness meditation been in the week we've just had? So again, that can be sharing, some of the things you're finding challenging about it. Even if you have, found it difficult to do it 6 times a week, which is, what we're ideally asking for, just being real honest about that. Or any new insights that perhaps have occurred whilst you've been meditating a bit more. So again, if anyone wants to share anything, you can just put your hand up. So Christine?
I only managed it twice this week, and I was thinking, how can I not manage 10 minutes a day? But I just didn't somehow seem to manage to do it. So it's just actually doing it. When I do it, I enjoy it, and I can get into it, but I don't know what's happened to my time somehow. And I don't like doing it very, very last thing, like just when I'm about to go to bed, because I don't know if that's quite so good, really. Maybe it should be. I think it was when I was doing transcendental meditation, they told me not to do it last thing at night because it tends to wake you up a bit.
Yes. Me and Molly, when we had our Q&A, we did talk about this a little bit. Generally, it is better to do it earlier in the day. The classic thing when you do it late is that the mind is tired. And because it can also be relaxing, what can happen is you start to relax and you're also tired, especially if you're listening to someone's voice, which can be quite meditative as well if their voice is quite relaxing, is that you can just fall asleep, or just go, maybe not asleep, but you sort of go offline a bit, which isn't really the goal. So it can be definitely an extra challenge. And some people think, oh, well, I'll do it when I'm lying in bed. And then they put the headphones on. But again, the same thing can happen, especially when you're supine, if you're lying down, which is why when we're meditating, when it's earlier in the day, it's a little bit different, but usually it is good to sit with a straight spine rather than to be lying down, especially not lying down on the bed. Is anyone else finding it difficult to bring in that 10-minute meditation to each day? Yeah, Harriet?
I think it's just been a symptom of the past couple of weeks because it has been non-stop at work, and I've just handed in my notice and I've got a new job, and there's been so many distractions. But I would normally do it at night. And I think maybe I need to adjust that. And the trouble is I get up so early to get to work. I'm normally awake at like 5:30, and then I go into work and have a run. So maybe I could squeeze one in after is it okay to meditate after a run?
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do it then. Maybe that will be my plan this week. First thing.
Yeah. I've found that people tend to find it easier to meditate first thing in the morning. I don't necessarily mean easier in terms of the actual ability of your mind to focus more. Sometimes that can happen though, because you are not so tired. But also it's such a good way to start your day, to be in that practice of meditation, and also just from a very practical point of view, once you've done it, because as your day goes on, there's always so many excuses. And again, like I was talking to Molly about, is that our willpower is like a muscle. So if you're going through your day having to exercise willpower, most of us do, we would like to do something and we do something else instead, or we think, I'm going to leave that for now because actually I really want to do that, but I need to focus on this because I've got this deadline. Or you feel like you'd like to do something but your child wants to do something else, so you have to decide to do that instead. And so all the time, usually we don't go through life just doing everything that we want all day long. So we're constantly using our willpower, and it is a muscle. You only have so much, which is one reason, if I link that to like dieting, for instance, that really restrictive diets where you're cutting out massive food groups or cutting out lots of things you like, on a very sort of practical psychological level, a lot of the reason why they don't work is because we can't humanly practice that much willpower effectively for that long. We just can't do it. And so with our meditation, if you're leaving it till the very end of the evening, you need willpower to make a new habit. It's something that you're deciding to do that's out of the ordinary, that does require your willpower. And so that's also a reason why doing it earlier in the day is can be a really wise thing to do. After you've had a run, you're probably in a really good state actually, because same thing like with yoga, when you've moved and invigorated your body a bit, it does have an effect on your mind, and sometimes it's easier to drop into that quieter, more observing place. So experiment with doing that. And the other thing I thought was really important to just voice, that again me and Molly spoke about on in our Q&A, was the difference between motivation and discipline. So if you, and this really goes for most things that you're trying to do, changing a habit, if you wait until you feel like doing it because you believe that you should feel motivated to make that change. Really, motivation is about a feeling. You feel motivated, and usually it's quite invigorating and energizing, and you really want to do this or that. If you rely on that when you're trying to make positive habits, new ones, then you'll almost always fall flat on your face, because you're really never going to feel like doing the thing that you want to do. And we could probably have many analogies of that in our life. If often we go to yoga and it's great, but we might not actually feel like going before we go, or we go for a run. Once it's a habit, your body is making the decision more than your mind. But at the beginning, it is, don't wait to feel like doing it. It's really that discipline, which is again why just waking up in the morning and trying to fit it in then is a good idea, because the longer the day goes on, your willpower goes, and also the excuses that you give yourself, i.e., I don't feel like doing it quite now. So just remembering that difference. So not relying on your motivation, don't wait to feel like doing it, just exercise that discipline, and see if you can do it earlier in the day, or at least not when you're really tired. Harriet's got a little visitor.
Sorry, that was really helpful. Thank you.
Great, yeah. And then last week we did our mindful eating of the cheese and the crackers. And any feedback or any experiences over the past week of any mindful eating practices? Which have you managed to incorporate it at all? We did our mini meditations. So hopefully you've all watched the video from last week. So we introduced the mini meditation, which is really, as it says on the tin, it's just a few mindful moments to check in with your breath, check in with your body before you eat. Was anyone able to incorporate that into their eating? Christine, yeah?
Yes, I managed it a few times. I've been, definitely more aware of my food and eating slower. And I'm trying, it doesn't even feel like much of an effort, but I put my fork down or whatever I'm eating with between each mouthful, because I can be terrible at, just shoveling it in, even though I have tried to be aware for years about my food. But I think I've got a bit better at doing that and slower. And I think maybe and I have done a few of the mini meditations, and that seems to sort of slow it down, which is helpful. So I'm quite pleased with that bit.
Wonderful. Anyone else had any experience of doing the mini meditation before eating? Any feedback from that? Molly?
I have found that I'm hardly eating anything. But before I eat, I would smell what I'm eating now, smell it, and just try and chew on both sides of my mouth as well, because I have jaw pain. And so that's helping a lot because of the physio that I've been given. And I had a mouth guard fitted. So I think a lot of those things to do with orally, like focusing in on the food itself, has helped with the pain as well. So it's been really helpful.
Great.
I haven't been eating very much, so I don't know what that's about. But
well, I mean, obviously it's hard to necessarily comment on that, knowing how much you would normally eat, but sometimes, definitely when we begin to eat more mindfully, we often will eat less. Yeah, Harriet?
Just to add to that, I found exactly the same thing, Molly. So I found that I'm hardly ever hungry, which is really weird. And to wait until you're hungry to eat, I find I'm going hours, but that's probably a really good thing. And I'm just listening to my body, and that's just what it needs.
Yeah, I think that's often, which is why this is not, it is not a course with the sole purpose of losing weight. But if you are slightly overweight, or perhaps even not being overweight, but you're overeating a bit, then it definitely it does help with that on various different levels. So very often, especially at the beginning, a lot of people will say that they feel like they're eating a lot less than they normally do, which is really a positive thing, because it's not coming from any outward restriction that you're telling yourself, I mustn't do this or I should eat less. It's just that it's arising as a natural byproduct of you being more mindful and tuning into your body more, and again, so, not judging that. And if you're eating less for now, you're eating less, and we'll see how that sort of develops over the course of the next few weeks. So let's just see what else we want to cover now. Did anyone else want to say anything about their experience of mindful eating or the mini meditations over the last week? Lisa, obviously you've been on holiday. So perhaps have you been able to practice some mindful eating whilst on holiday?
Oh yes, I did, definitely. It was difficult because there's so much on display that you could possibly have.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I did, because I'm actually a really fussy, picky eater. So I'm very fussy, and I don't just like get loads and loads of food. I'm sort of opposite. I need to get little bits. So it annoys my husband no end, and everyone else.
Brilliant, thanks for sharing. So in the email I sent out, I asked us all to bring our Keep in Balance form and also our mindfulness form. So don't worry if you don't have it with you, but just a show of hands, who has got that to hand and can refer back to it? Harry, is that a no? So that's everyone bar Harriet, I think. So don't worry, that's fine. I'm going to get it up on my screen anyway, so we can see it. So in the last session, I asked us to, I think we had hopefully prior filled it in already, but I asked us to just take a look at it, and for our kind of home practice, as it were, to bring our attention to 3 things, that habits or parts of that that we would like to improve. So let me just get it up. Keep it in balance. Here we go. I'll just share my screen for a moment. Oh, I've forgotten how to share my screen. Where is that? Sorry, I've had a mental block. I've done this loads of times. Here we go. So, keep in balance. So this was our questionnaire, which hopefully we've already been through and scored. You didn't have to add up the score, but just scored in terms of each question, each item. And then I asked us to go through and just look at all of the different ones, and it didn't necessarily have to be that they were the ones that we scored highest on, but perhaps the ones that we felt were the most important to us, that we would like to be able to either increase if it's something we want to increase, or to decrease. So just thought I'd see if anyone wants to share their 3 things that they'd like to work on, that they'd like to improve. Chances are other people probably may share those as well. If you feel like sharing those, then you can just put your hand up, unmute yourself. Did we manage to do that? Don't worry if you didn't, because we can do it together. Did everyone manage to score there, to highlight those 3 things? Yes, Christine did. Annie, Molly did, yeah. Lisa did, oh, you did. Chelsea, I can't see Chelsea, but hopefully you did. So, Molly, do you fancy sharing? You're on mute. That's it.
My mouse is doing this, so it's taken me a while to get it down to the corner.
Oh no, I know that one.
Hectic. Probably I'm really proud of myself for not eating anything directly out of the packet from the fridge this week. So
rather than, I mean, yeah, just maybe share what were the 3 things that you highlighted on this, whether or not you've done them in the last week, but just things that over the course of the next few weeks. Were there 3 things that you highlighted you would like to
improve? I just did the one.
Okay, don't worry. So Christine?
Mine was being a bit more active. I've got to try and be a bit more active, and I have managed to do a bit more active. I go in bursts with the activities. So I mean, before I started this course, but I'd kind of gotten a lull. So I've been trying to be a bit more active, and I think I have a bit. The other bit, right at the beginning, I left my food on my plate, discarded part of my snack, and I put never in the last week when I filled it in. And I'm trying to think about whether, because I have a great tendency to just finish what's on my plate or what's in front of me rather than thinking, do I really need it? So I'm trying to become a bit more aware of that one. And it's the waiting till I feel physically hungry enough. I've been doing a bit of that as well, and that's quite interesting. No, I'm not actually hungry. I agree with the other 2 ladies about the eating a bit less this week. I think I have not eaten as much because I've been kind of being a bit more aware of when I've had enough.
Great.
Yeah. So there's that.
Brilliant, thank you. So what was it? I wanted to just say something. Oh yes, so I think that's a really, really common one that many of us, and perhaps it goes back to childhood, that we find it very difficult to leave food on our plate. I hear that a lot, and a way to think about that is we have an idea that it's wasteful, and especially in the world that we live in, that waste is a really big social problem. It is equally just as wasteful to put excess food in your body that your body then has to deal with, that actually isn't required at all. So just switching that around and thinking about that, and a really good little practical thing you can do, which I started doing when I started becoming much more mindful with my eating, is I realized I used to cook something, and because I was cooking a meal, I mean, rarely would I cook loads and loads and have extra for the freezer. So I would cook a meal that I would envisage would fill us for this meal that we're having. And because there are 2 of us, a small child, I would feel that I had to distribute all of the thing I've just cooked between mostly those 2 plates. So I'd load them and I'd think, oh, it's really plentiful and amazing and all this food. And often the same thing would happen, that I would just eat it in front of me and then feel ridiculously full and lethargic and not very nice. And what I started, and also what would sometimes happen with my partner, is that he'd ask if there was any more, and I'd say no, because I've just eaten more than I needed, and I distributed it all between us to begin with. So I started just putting less on plates, and that meant that there was second helpings if they were wanted, which is a really nice thing. And it also meant that there were leftovers rather than just the because, you know, leftovers on a plate that you've been diving into aren't quite as nice, but leftovers of something that's been untouched that you can then put in the fridge. And it's just a really small thing I did, but it actually had a really big impact. So that's something that you can, if that's something that you struggle with, then just being mindful of how much you're putting on your plate to begin with. And putting less probably on your plate than you would usually. Brilliant. So if anyone didn't manage to hasn't filled in this form full stop, then really do try to do it this week, because we're going to be referring back to it, and it's really nice to just have some baselines of things. And if you filled it in but you haven't managed to highlight those 3 things that you want to work on, then see if you can also do that this week. And then our mindfulness questionnaire, have people managed to fill that in? Show of hands who filled it in. And then and then did we manage to highlight those two points on that you'd like to improve on? And if so, did we all manage to do that? You could just show your hand if you did. Christine, Lisa. So Lisa, perhaps you'd like to share. Did you manage to highlight 2 points that you wanted to improve on? If you did,
yes, I did. Sorry. Number 4, it was. I believe some of my thoughts are abnormal or bad, and I shouldn't think that way. That was that one.
Yeah.
And the other one was, I think some of my emotions are bad or inappropriate, and I shouldn't feel them. And that's what I thought.
Okay. Yeah, that's very common ones, those. So that's really good to see how those improve. I'm just going to share my screen again so you can see the questionnaire for anyone who hasn't managed to fill it in yet. So it's the 5-facet mindfulness questionnaire. I'm trying to remember, apologies because I've got 2 versions of this. Is it the 15-item one? Are there 15 questions in
yes,
it?
Yes, I've only got the 15 one.
Yeah, great. Okay, Lisa, do you want to just mute yourself again?
Of course.
Yeah. Christine, did you want to share something, or were you?
No, I was just saying, yes, it was the 15 one, not the...
Oh, okay. Thank you. So yes, it's just 15 items. It doesn't take very long to do. If you haven't filled it in, see if you can really make that a priority this week. Again, it's really good to have some baselines of things, and also just answering the questions in themselves brings more awareness to certain aspects of our behaviour or our thinking, or how we think about our thinking. And then it's nice because hopefully we'll be able to see that as we go through the course that we're improving on a few of those, especially the couple that we have highlighted. So I thought I'd just share something that we're going to be doing as a home practice this week before we move on to our practical. So let me get that up. So quality over quantity. So last week we looked at outer wisdom. So again, hopefully we've all managed to watch that session. And this week, this exercise that I'm going to share with you, which is it's a home practice, is really to bring more awareness to the choices that we're making about the foods that we eat. And we spoke about the onion, so thinking about your food in terms of not calories, because they're really relatively unimportant, but thinking about that onion. So we've got the outer layer of an onion, which is really the skin that no one eats because it just goes in the bin, and that's like the calories. And then we've got the the kind of outer flesh, which is like our macronutrients, so our protein, our fats, our carbs, which is important. And better to think about those things than to think about calories. But at the very inside of the onion is our micronutrients, which are really the all the different nutrients that help our body function properly and bring a lot of medicinal effects and well-being to the mind, to the body. And so seeing if we can shift the way we're thinking and think about the micronutrient content of our foods. And I shared some slides about that, so hopefully we've all seen them. We didn't manage to completely get to the end of that outer wisdom talk, which hopefully I can add on today. But this exercise, it's called quality over quantity, and it's a worksheet that we're just going to fill in for a week. Let me get it up and I can just talk you through it for a moment. I'll be sending this out to you in the email when I send this live session. So here, I'll just read it. So it's exploring possible foods to cut back on and healthier foods to add. So we're not necessarily doing that with any intention to decrease our calorie intake, but I want you to think about the kind of the real quality of the food. So thinking about whole foods, thinking about the micronutrients, rather than just thinking about calories. So be creative, try out different possibilities. See if you can find at least one food at every meal or snack to consider decreasing or taking out, and at least one healthier food to add each meal or day. And I've added, so we've got this easier, harder column to estimate the difficulty. I took out the calorie column because I didn't want it in there. So we've got just a scale so we can see how easy or how hard did we find making that change. And then you can think about which changes you could keep doing. So we're only going to do this for, maximum, I think it's, well, on here there's just 3 days. So if you get really into this, then you can keep going. But really it's just an exercise to bring awareness to how we're making choices. And usually once you've done that for a couple of days, it'll start to filter through more to more of the decisions that you're making. So just give you an example. So if you can print this out when I send it to you, great. But also you could just remember in a day the choices you've made and then just fill it in on your own bit of paper. You don't have to fill in this actual form. But this is just a format that might be helpful. So Monday, let's say you've got breakfast and you had white toast and butter orange juice. So this is what you might normally have on a Monday. And then if you think about a food that could be reduced or added, so you might be having this, but you could have a bit less butter if you normally lather it on really, really thick. And maybe if you normally have white bread, you could choose to have whole grain or even sourdough. And if you normally have a massive pint of juice, you could just be a little bit more moderate with that and have a bit less. So it might be that you would only make one of those changes, or it might be that you want to see of each thing that you're having, toast, butter, orange juice, can you change that in some way to be more healthy? It might be that you have this, but you also add in an apple. Yes, it's not necessarily taking things down. It could be at the addition of something as well. And then any change that you make, so whether that's also had an apple or whatever it is, just you can do on a scale of 1 to 7, 1 being, oh, that was really, really easy, 7 being, I found that really hard actually. And again, morning snacks, so you have 2 donuts, coffee with sugar. Instead of 2, you could have 1, and you could have a banana instead of your second donut. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward. And just see if you can engage with that just for 2 or 3 days. If you want to go for longer, then that's fine as well. So yeah, I'll be sending that out in the email. And we're going to move on now to our hunger awareness. So this week, a big part of our practice, let me stop the share, is looking at tuning into the body a bit more, and specifically our awareness of our hunger. So let me get my slides up actually for a moment. So feel free, before I bring this slide up, if anyone wants to just take a couple of minutes and go and grab a glass of water or something, feel free to do that, and then we can meet again in a couple of minutes' time if you need the toilet or anything as well.
Ask a quick question.
Yeah.
If I'm not hungry for breakfast, does it matter that I don't have breakfast?
No, if you're not hungry, but just experiment with that, because if you're not hungry but then you're getting to lunch and finding that you're experiencing negative side effects because you haven't eaten so long, i.e., you might feel a bit lightheaded or low energy or moody or whatever those things could be, then whilst you might not want breakfast, you might want to adjust how long you're going before you have lunch, or just have another snack, which is again just tuning into there's no right or wrong. And if you're genuinely not hungry, then don't force yourself to eat, but then just being mindful of at which point you might start to feel hungry, or how you feel when you have lunch, because sometimes if you go from not having breakfast to lunch, it can cause you to overeat at lunch because you've gone so long and you're really, really hungry. And when we're really hungry, the discernment to choose just really goes out the window, which is why getting to that. And this exercise will be perfect for you, actually, because that's what we're tuning into today. So I think we're all back. So I'm going to get up my slides. So the practical part of our session today is looking at physical hunger awareness. And so, as I've written here, a core part of this program of mindful eating and mindfulness-based eating awareness is about learning to tune into the physical hunger signals from the body, and then learning how to discern between these and other triggers for eating. Very often, which we will begin to really uncover, we are often not eating out of true hunger, but out of hunger for something else, or many other reasons we might eat. So just talking a little bit about physical hunger awareness. So both inner and, apologies, that should be outer, let me adjust that now. Both inner and outer wisdom are used to learn to recognize physical hunger signals. So the inner wisdom aspect of that really emerges as we become more familiar with our personal experiences of hunger, which we're going to begin to engage with today. And it's about learning to value and notice these signals instead of ignoring them. So very often we might not be very in tune with the body. Many of us are not, or are quite disembodied, or we live very much up in our heads. For very many reasons that can happen. And so actually we're not very in tune with the body, which might be part of not being in tune with our intuition. It might also be that we're not very in tune with any of those things that our body's telling us, one of which is hunger. And the inner wisdom is also about recognizing our own challenges to noticing these signals. So it might be that we begin to uncover that actually we confuse anxiety with being hungry. And interestingly, when we feel anxious, it does actually mimic some of the same hormones that can happen when we feel hungry. And the outer wisdom aspect of engaging with our physical hunger awareness is understanding some basic physiology of hunger and appetite, which we're going to cover. And like we've been uncovering in our outer wisdom last week, having a basic understanding of energy and the nutritional value of food. So, what does physical hunger mean? And what's it related to? So does anyone want to tell me what is physical, what does physical hunger mean? What does it mean to be physically hungry? It's not necessarily an easy question to answer, but Harriet, yeah?
Sorry. For me, it manifests itself in many different ways, but it can be a sort of ache in your stomach. That's how I feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. Stomach ache or that kind of gnawing feeling when we get hungry. And does anyone know what physical hunger is related to? Again, that's not necessarily an easy question to answer. We might think we all know what hunger is. So just we'll cover these in a moment, but does anyone have an answer or an opinion on how physical hunger is different from psychological hunger? So was that Christine, was that your hand, or you just, yeah?
Yeah, I was just thinking it's probably related to having a low blood sugar, because when I feel hungry, sometimes I just feel it in my stomach. Other times I actually feel faint and feel sick.
Yes.
And then if I eat, then I don't feel faint, and I think it feels like I'm having some sugar. I mean,
Yep.
I'm not necessarily having sugar, but it puts my blood sugar up.
Yeah, definitely. And does anyone want to tell me how they think that physical hunger is different from psychological hunger? No, that's fine. So we're going to cover those in a minute. So hunger, physical hunger, is our body's way of driving us to find food and eat so that we stay alive. So it's a survival mechanism. And it happens, like Christine said, physical hunger is a physiological thing. It's about our biochemistry, and it happens when the cells in our body and our bloodstream signal to our brain that our blood sugar is low. And the brain then releases certain hormones and biochemicals that make us feel physically hungry, which drives the behavior to find and eat food to keep us alive. So if we don't eat when we're hungry, what can happen is the body can start to burn a bit of stored energy and fat, which can cause the feelings of hunger to fluctuate. But if we continue to go much beyond that point, we can start to experience some negative side effects of being overly hungry, which are related to blood sugar, which can be lightheadedness, it can be feeling a bit dizzy, it can be a negative effect on our mood. It can be anxiety, making us feel slightly anxious. Again, because those hormones of being very hungry are quite similar. Some of the things that are released in our bloodstream are quite similar to what happens when we're a bit anxious. And we can find it difficult to focus and concentrate on things. And our decision making can really go out of the window because your brain needs your blood sugar in order to function properly. Especially the frontal, the most evolutionarily young part of our brain, which is our executive functions like decision making and problem solving and things. And we all experience hunger in different ways. So how Harriet feels when she says, "Oh, this is how I feel hungry, this is what happens to me," might be different to what Molly might say or what Lisa might say, etc. But research does show that it's very easy to get triggered into eating food when we're not physically hungry. So if you remember, I think in the first week I shared that piece of research about how most of us would probably estimate we make about 15 choices a day on what we're eating and drinking, but actually it's more like 220. But we would never estimate it being that high because most of those happen unconsciously. And the problem with not bringing mindfulness to the decisions that we're making about when and what and how to eat is that we become really vulnerable to these external cues. We become really vulnerable to our emotions, and we become really vulnerable. We might just walk past someone eating a donut And we might couple that with feeling a bit anxious and suddenly we're starving. So that's where this can be a really, really powerful practice as well, just to notice when we're being triggered into eating food, but our body isn't actually truly physiologically asking for it. And research also shows that people who have difficulty managing eating tend to be more sensitive to these kind of triggers. So we've got research that shows that sometimes emotional triggers for eating can mimic physical hunger signals. So I touched on that before, anxiety, for instance. But the good news is that research does also show us that we can learn to become more aware of these triggers and therefore exercise more power over them. So we're going to work on another part of our inner wisdom now that can help with changing automatic and mindless eating, which is called the hunger self-awareness practice. So hopefully none of us had a particularly big meal before we came, because that will help with this exercise that we're about to do. So stop the share for a moment. So again, just make sure that you're comfortable. And so sitting with a nice tall, straight spine. And just begin to, so closing the eyes, and then you can begin to bring yourself to a centered place, bringing your attention gently to your breathing. And following the breath in and out a few times. And bringing your awareness now to your entire body. So from the very crown of the head, down the torso, down the arms, down the legs to the tip of your toes. And noticing to yourself right now how physically hungry you are. So on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being as physically hungry as you could possibly be, and 0 or 1 being that you're not hungry at all. So 10 being as hungry as you could possibly be, 0 or 1 that you're not in the slightest hungry. So how hungry, physically hungry, are you right now? So there's no right or wrong answer. And now that you've found your hunger level and given it a number, how do you know that? What experiences or sensations helped you to find that number? And now coming back to the breath, again watching the breath flow in, watching the breath flow out. And then coming back to the space of the room we're in, perhaps sounds around you. And then when you're ready, gently opening the eyes. So that was a hunger awareness mini meditation, really. So I'm just going to ask for someone to tell me what that number they came up with was, and what physical sensations led you to give that number. So when I ask the question, how do you know this? What was that number and how did you know what it was? So if you want to share that, again, just go ahead, put your hand up. And then you can unmute yourself. Molly?
My number was 2, and because I'd had a snack about half an hour before, so it was a light dinner. Probably going to have some more later, but I don't think it was my physical hunger signals telling me that it was that number. It was, I decided it because I went through the spectrum in my mind, and then I thought about how I felt about whether I should have eaten less or more, and I haven't really got any physical signs that I am hungry or that I'm not hungry. I was just convincing myself that that's how I should feel and that that's what I should do. And does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's really interesting. The first thing that you said to me, so when I said the question to what was the number and what physical sensations told you that, which really is what you just explained very nicely, is that the first thing you said was it was number 2 because I'd eaten a light dinner. So that's a thought, that's not a feeling, which you went on to say that you found it very difficult to tune into how you felt physically, which was very obvious in the way that you responded to the question. And that can be really common, that it's the first time that we start to practice perhaps being tuned into our bodies or being tuned into our physical hunger is something that it might not come naturally at all, and it might take a few times to really be able to bring awareness to, not on a thought level, why should I or shouldn't I be hungry, but on a very inner physical bodily level, what is my body telling me about how hungry I am? So that was really interesting feedback. Thank you. Anyone else? Harriet?
Mine is a 6 or a 7 because I haven't really eaten very much today, and I didn't really eat much for dinner at all. Just had some sweet corn. But I did listen to my body when I made that judgment. But it wasn't just that, it was also an external stimulus trigger because my bastard husband is making toast and it smells delicious. And I just smelt it and thought, I really want some toast with jam and butter. I could smell the jam wafting across my face. And I thought, well, that's got to edge it up a notch. So it probably would have been a 6, but it went up a bit to a 7. But I can see that that's probably not really a 7. It's just the trigger.
So, and again, in answering that question, you've done quite largely what Molly did, is you've explained to me on a thought level the reason it was the number it was is because you've had a fairly light dinner. But obviously, on a physical level, when I asked the question earlier and you answered, which is, what does physical hunger feel like? And you said, like a kind of ache in your stomach. So at being kind of at level 6 or 7 of hunger, what physical experiences were telling you that that was the number you would give?
So it's interesting. It was like, I do have an aching in my stomach at the moment, like sort of growling. But then the more that I was thinking about it, it kind of subsided, which is really strange because I was sort of tuned into it. And I find that my hunger does change over time. So sometimes if I forget that I'm hungry, it kind of goes away for a bit. And I kind of had that feeling where I felt that it was like hunger pain in my stomach, not like horrendous pain, but you could just feel it. And then I thought about it and it kind of subsided. And then I smelt the jam and then my mind just went elsewhere.
So very often our hunger will that's very common, that we feel hungry and we don't eat, and then we don't feel hungry anymore, which can be because your body has started to burn some stored energy, which in moderation can be a really helpful thing metabolically to be able to do, that you can switch to burning some of your stored energy. But pushing that too far, it can mean that we don't feel hungry anymore, but the body would still like to eat, and it can become a bit more of a stressful thing where the body's really internally trying to manage its blood sugar level in the absence of any help from the outside. But yes, thanks very much. So yeah, the toast and jam, I think that would make most people a bit more hungry. Toast is one of those things, isn't it? And did anyone answer that as being on a sort of number 8 or 9, being really hungry? No, so probably most of us were a bit less hungry than that because we had a lighter dinner. Why do you think that this might be helpful? Is there a way that you could, after doing that small practice, is there some benefit you can see of being able to do that? You think it might be helpful to you? Yeah. So again, this is a bit like how we can use our mini meditations. And that's something that we'll be trying to do for our home practices. So our mini meditation was really just an invitation to become aware of our breathing and any tension that we're holding in the body before we eat. And then we're going to just add in the layer to that of a few times, as many times as you can in the week, but you can't do it too much. Just in your mini meditation, before you have a snack or before you eat a meal, also ask yourself this question and ask yourself to rate it. So you're breathing, you're checking in, just feeling the breath, checking in with how the physical body is feeling in terms of any tension, any thoughts or feelings you might have around food that you're about to eat. Like, oh, I shouldn't really be having this, but I need something in a rush, and whatever that might be. And then you can ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hungry am I? And then you can just tune into what it is that is telling you that, and just keep a good eye out for when that answer comes in the form of thoughts, or when it comes in the form of picking up on a physical sensation. Because thinking about hunger and answering that question in terms of thought processes really takes you away from that inner wisdom and your body. It takes you right up into your head. But really try to answer that from lower down in your body, from picking up on those sensations. And the first few times you do it, you might pull a bit of a blank. You might actually not really know how it is that you know that answer other than by thinking about it. But as you do it more, you will tune into more of the awareness of the physical sensations in the body. So we're going to finish up with doing a body scan. So, which is really an exercise in bringing a bit more mindfulness, a bit more acceptance, and compassion to our physical bodies. So most of us, especially women, tend to struggle with aspects of poor body image. There's lots of research showing that. I think it's about 9 out of 10 women struggle with their body image, which is nearly all of us. So you might not like your body as a whole, you might not mind it, but there might be aspects about your body that you don't like, or that you're not very able to be compassionate about, or that you'd like to change. And I asked us to, I sent the body appreciation scale. So again, don't worry if you haven't managed to fill it in. I'll bring that up for a moment before we do this practice. And if you haven't managed to fill it in, then see if you can fill it in this week. Just bring some awareness to how it is that you think and feel about your body. So let me share my screen with you. So it's this one. You might be familiar with it if you've managed to fill it in already. So there's only 13 questions. I'll go through them with you. Maybe just, if you haven't done it, then just think about your answer now. You answer it in your head as we go through it, and then it'll be quicker to do it once you do. So just bear in mind before I read them that 1 is that you never have this attitude or this behavior towards your body, and 5 is that you always do. Within those things is seldom, not very often, sometimes, quite often, up to always. So I respect my body. I feel good about my body. On the whole, I'm satisfied with my body. Despite its flaws, I accept my body for what it is. I feel that my body has at least some good qualities. I take a positive attitude towards my body. I am attentive to my body's needs. My self-worth is independent of my body shape or weight. I do not focus a lot of energy being concerned with my body shape or weight. My feelings toward my body are positive for the most part. I engage in healthy behaviors to take care of my body. I do not allow unrealistically thin images of women presented in the media to affect my attitude towards my body. Despite its imperfections, I still like my body. So if you haven't managed to fill that in and you answered those questions, then perhaps after this you could just jot those down on the sheet so that you've kind of got a record of that. And we're going to move on now to our body scan. So being aware of our bodies and being comfortable in them is really a part of developing a better relationship to meeting our needs. So self-care is a really big thing these days, very fashionable, but it's very difficult to practice self-care if you view your body as a bit of an object, which is something we often tend to do. We sort of cut ourselves off from the neck below, and we spend a lot of time thinking about our bodies, judging our bodies, but we don't spend so much time experiencing the body. And many people who struggle with their weight do have a tendency to shut the awareness of their body off. And that can be because how they think and feel about their bodies is quite distressing. And so there's this intention, subconscious, to just really not be in your body because it can be less uncomfortable. But we do know that if you struggle with poor body awareness and poor body acceptance, it is much more difficult to really meet your needs, to take care of yourself, to experience greater well-being. And we're much more likely to be judgmental of ourselves on very many different levels. So practicing being more accepting of our bodies, which doesn't mean that we have to love them. Loving our body might feel like a bit of a big stretch, but accepting our bodies for what they are right now is really very possible, and something that we should really aim to cultivate. And we don't need to think about loving every aspect of our body. I don't think that's normal. You don't have to be ecstatically in love with every single part of yourself, but if you want to experience greater joy and inner peace, then we do need to learn to just be more accepting of ourselves, which includes accepting of obviously the thoughts and the feelings that we have as people, knowing that these are natural, they're just aspects of being human, but also being more accepting of the fact that we have a body that isn't perfect. So we're going to just experience this body scan, which is really part of developing greater self-acceptance of the body. So again, just make sure that you are sitting comfortably. And just feel that you can be in a relaxed position, however that is for you right now. So letting go. Experiencing a sense of softness and ease. And relaxing each part of your body. Relax your feet. Relax your legs. Relax your pelvis. Your buttocks. Relax your stomach. Relax your shoulders. Relax your arms. Relax your neck. Relax your jaw, your tongue. Relax your cheeks. Relax your eyes. Relax your forehead. Relax the skin on the whole of the scalp. Relaxing the whole body, head to toes. And now bring your awareness to your whole body. And now bring your awareness to a specific place in your body. Where does your attention go? What place did you go to? Just notice. And be aware of thoughts or feelings about that place, whether positive or negative. Notice any judging. And letting go of judgment now, and instead trying to bring a sense of caring and acceptance to your experience of your body. Bringing a sense of caring and acceptance to your experience of your body. Now feeling into the center of the body. How comfortable are you allowing your attention to be focused on your body? Again, just notice without judging. And bring a sense of acceptance. As you remain relaxed, briefly scan your body again and notice if there's any place that is particularly calling for your attention. So resting your mind there, on that part of your body. And resting your mind there as if you are deeply listening to what your body might say. Deeply listening. Without judging, but with acceptance. And as you remain relaxed, gently bring your awareness to the extent that you can to a place in your body that raises some feelings of discomfort. And be aware of it. Be aware of the feelings of discomfort. And if they feel too intense, then move on to another place where the discomfort is a little less. Stay with the discomfort that's there. Just stay with it. No need to analyze it or judge it or try to understand it. Just stay present with it. Let those feelings rise and fall as they will. Knowing that any thoughts or feelings you may have about your body are not your body, and they do not define you. They are simply thoughts and feelings about your body. And now let your awareness come back to your breath. Allow yourself to relax. Let go of any feelings, perhaps of discomfort or unease that might still remain. Just let go of those feelings. Remaining relaxed. Now once more, briefly scan your body and notice a place that calls to your attention in a positive way. somewhere in your body that you are proud of. Be aware of what incredible work your feet, your wrists, your lungs and your heart do for you. Be aware of the awesomeness of your body in helping you to live your life. Resting your attention on that specific place in your body that you are proud of, that you feel positive about. And staying with this awareness. Again, without going into analysis, just resting with your breath on this awareness. Perhaps even gently smiling to yourself. And now bring your attention back to just your breath. And take a moment to thank your body for existing, for allowing you to live your life, doing all of the wonderful things that you're able to do, really because you have a body. And thanking your body for any communication or new awareness that may have occurred. And then bringing your awareness back to the space of the room. When you're ready, gently opening the eyes and stretching yourself out. So there will be a recording of that practice. So hopefully we can, it's not actually in our home practice. I don't think I specifically added it, but it'll be there, and it would be a nice thing if you found that helpful or insightful in some way, especially if you're someone who really does struggle with having a positive, accepting relationship to your body, then be a really nice idea to engage with that practice a bit more. So it's 9:10, so we're going to wrap this up now. What I'll do is, with the end of the outer wisdom that we didn't cover, I'll send you those slides. I think it was just that we didn't get to covering a little bit about busting some myths around fat intake, and a few of the benefits of physical exercise. So if I've got time, I might even just record myself like I am, but without anyone, and just send it to you. So I'll read the slides, otherwise I'll send them to you so you can read them. I just thought I'd quickly go over, just to do that whilst we're all here, just going over what our home practice is for this week. So again, you'll get this in an email, but first of all, engaging with some of the new practices, so getting to know your physical hunger. So see if you can really eat when you're physically hungry, and just bringing your awareness to that, so noticing the difference between physical hunger and perhaps other reasons or triggers for eating, which we're going to discuss a bit more next week, are some other triggers for eating. And again, engaging with that mini meditation, bringing in the hunger awareness to that. So just that aspect of labeling 1 to 10 how hungry you are, and how do you kind of know what that number is. And tuning into the body in other ways. So seeing if you can take a few moments as you go through your week to just remember this practice we've just done, and see if you can bring your awareness to your feet, for instance, or the tip of your fingers. So it's really connecting that, because very often we do have this segregation between what goes on in the head and the body. So trying to get those pathways, which is really all to do with the nervous system and how that feeds back brain to body, body to brain, trying to get those going a little bit more. This will be in more detail with some more specific things. And ongoing practices, so mindfulness meditation, seeing if you can engage with a longer practice, a 20-minute practice, as well as doing the 10-minute ones. So not as well as on the same day, but see if 1 or 2 days, more if you can do a longer meditation. If you're really struggling just to fit it in at all, then just dial it back and just try to do 10 minutes of meditation, every day. Don't sort of, if you're struggling to do it and you've only done it a couple of times this week, then don't just try to go for 20 minutes. Keep it simple. And then ongoing practices of engaging with our mindful eating. So that's the mini meditations, but also just bringing more awareness to what you're eating, how you're eating, and paying more attention to your level of hunger as you do. And also how your level of hunger might change. So you might say, oh, well, you're a number 8. And then you could engage with that again halfway through your meal. How hungry am I now? Perhaps you'll be a 4. Maybe you're still feeling really, really hungry. And again, there's no right or wrong, but just practicing that. We've got our quality over quantity worksheet. Again, that's just for 1 or 2, 3 days, just seeing what swaps you could make, choosing food more for quality than the quantity, and what positive changes you can make in terms of actual addition of foods or taking out of amounts or foods. And as usual, if you're engaging with the journaling and you're finding that helpful, then continuing to do that. There's some new questions on the journal for this week to just bring your awareness to. You might want to write them down, or just look at them and think about them. And if you're managing to do your daily practice tracking sheet, then continuing to fill that in. That can be a good idea, because again, it can just help you see, or maybe the first 3 weeks you weren't really managing, but something really shifted, and in the 4th week maybe you really managed to get that willpower, that more discipline, and that positive experience of practicing every day, maybe because you figured out the best time or whatever that is. So I'll send that to you all with some more info. And if anyone has got any questions before we end, feel free to ask me now. No? Brilliant. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Really nice to see you all. And I'll send an email out tomorrow, and hopefully see you all next Wednesday for our live session again. Bye. Have a lovely evening.